Hey, this is Danny from Keebio, and today we're going to be building an Iris Rev.5 with stainless steel plates and Boba U4T switches. You're unfamiliar with Boba U4T switches. They're silent tactiles and pretty much they feel great. If you ever dealt with Zelios or Xylants, it's a pretty nice switch, so definitely check them out if you haven't tried them already. So, first step here is we're going to check our plate set here. So these are the stainless steel plates. We're just kind of checking each half to see if there's any kind of markings on there, scratches, whatnot. These look fine here. I'll show you some issue I found with another plate I had here. Here the screw holes here are a little bit off for some reason. So, and you can actually see this weird shift in the key cutouts there. So definitely check your plates before installing them, and if you find an issue with any of the components, whether it be the plates, PCBs, middle layer, just let me know and I'll send out a replacement. So these two plates look fine. Inspect the bottom plates. They look fine as well, so I'll just set them aside for later. I'll set this middle layer aside. Next, I'll check the PCBs. Now, the normal way I check them is I'll plug them in, and plug them into both halves, and then open up VIA and do some key testing there. I won't do that in this case. These have already been tested in advance, so I'll just go ahead and start building with them. So I'll do the left half first here. Switches out. So for this left half, we're going to be doing switches on all the key slots here except for the thumb key here. For the thumb key, we're going to do a rotary encoder. So first thing I want to do here is put some switches into the corners. And usually I put one in the middle as well. All right, there we go. Now we're gonna fit, well, before we fit the PCB on, just make sure all the switch pins are on here correctly, that they're straightened out. Now I'm gonna overlay the PCB onto the switches, and be really careful that you don't bend the switch pins as you're inserting them in. Alright, so everything looks good here. I'm gonna solder these 6 switches in first. So, got my solder here. This is Kester 6337 solder here. Today I'm gonna use a TS100. I just got this yesterday because it's on my recommendations list, and I wanted to make sure that this actually works as well as other people say it is, and it's been pretty nice so far. Kind of small. Well, I mean, I kind of like that it's small. Fits in my hand pretty nicely. And warms up very quickly. So definitely recommend it if you haven't if you're in the market for a new soldering iron. All right, so gonna hit these corner switches. Now, like I've probably mentioned in a couple other tutorials before, usually the amount of solder I'll use is about 1 centimeter per pad, or a little bit less. So I'll just bend it here just for visual purposes. And you can kind of see how much solder I'm using here. There you go. So yeah, that was about 1 centimeter of solder there. They'll give you that nice conical look to your solder joint that you're looking for. Okay, so now here I did bend a switch pin here. No big deal there. I'm just gonna push the switch out. See that the pin is bent here, so I'll unbend it. Put it back in. Now, pins are sticking through properly. Alright, there we go. So now, just gotta stick the rest of the switches in. And yeah, as I'm sticking these switches in, I'm just checking to make sure that the switch pins are straight before inserting them in. Especially with switches like bobas, one of the pins can be a little bit more flimsier than others, and you know, they can break off. So definitely check it out before you insert them in. This one's slightly bent here. Okay, there we go. They're all in there now. And then I will start soldering the rest of these switches in. Now, another thing I have here at my workbench that I'm not actually using right now because it kind of makes a lot of noise, and I'm not really too bothered by it, is I've got a DIY fume extractor here. So that's made from a 140 millimeter fan, or computer fan I got from Amazon, and then I 3D printed a nice case for it, and then it's powered by 12-volt power supply that just picked up from the thrift store for a couple bucks. So it does suck fumes pretty well, but luckily right now it's not really getting up in my face, so I'm not going to turn it on right now. Plus these fumes kind of smell nice, you know? Just don't get too addicted to it. And also, I'm working in a pretty large room right now, so yeah, if you're working in like a 8x8 room that's closed without any ventilation, yeah, that's probably not a good idea, although I've done that in the past. When I was working at my previous office, I would shut the door so the fumes wouldn't escape the room and annoy everybody else, but kind of at my detriment there. But I'm still alive. Almost done with this first half of the board here. Alright, so there we go. I'm gonna check the alignment here, make sure all the switches are straight. Sometimes it'll be a case where the switches are not straight in there, so reheat and solder as needed, but it looks like job was well done here. Okay, so now we're going to add the rotary encoder. Now, if you look in here for the Iris, there's nothing for the side arms to grab onto on the PCB, just due to the way I had to do the layout of this. So what we'll do is we're going to clip off these side pins first. So got a nice flush cutter here to do that. And then we're going to need to add some electrical tape because these metal contacts will come in contact with these switch pads here and the LED pads here, and that will cause some issues. So I'm going to cut some electrical tape to cover up that area. So about this width is fine, and I'm just gonna put it right over here. Cover up those metal contacts on the rotary encoder, and now I'll insert it in here. There we go. And then what I'll do is, usually I do the pins in the opposite corners first. So I'll hit those. I'm going to push up from behind a little bit just to make sure the encoder is sitting in all the way. Take a quick look here, make sure everything is level, and then I'll go ahead and do the other 3 pins of the encoder. Alright, and then I'll get the knob on here. Twist it around. Alright. So, there's the first half. Now, normally before I start putting the standoffs in and putting the bottom plate on, I will test it with the computer. I won't do that at the moment since I already did that. Well, I guess I haven't tested the switches, but I highly recommend that you do that before you close everything up. So now, we'll get the middle layer and bottom plate on. So here we go with the screws and standoffs. So usually I'll just do this part by hand without a screwdriver. Take a screw and standoff, stick it into the top plate here. And now I just realized, so the screws and standoffs that come in the stainless steel kit are 10 millimeters long, the standoffs are, whereas the middle layer here, that I'll crack open right now, the middle layer is supposed to be 10 millimeters thick, although in reality it's slightly under 10 millimeters, so about 9.5 millimeters. So what I do with these middle layer kits is include 9 millimeter standoffs. So we actually want to use that standoff pack in there as opposed to the 10 millimeter standoff pack that comes with the stainless steel plates. 10 millimeter standoffs also come with the FR4 plates, so you would also need to use this pack of 10 millimeter standoffs. But if you're getting the acrylic plates, they come with 9 millimeter standoffs, and you can just use the standoffs from either pack and you'll be fine. So I'll do a quick inspection of these middle layers. If you see some weird scratches or anything like that that bother you, please let me know and I'll send you a replacement. Alright, so now we've got these 9 millimeter standoffs. I'll put them in this slot so I don't mix them up with the 10 millimeter ones here. Alright. So yeah, I'm just taking the screw, sticking it through the switch plate here. Then getting the standoff onto it. Now as you're screwing the standoff on, just make sure you're doing it straight, or else you might ruin the thread in either the standoff or the screw, and then you would need to replace both the screw and the standoff. Doesn't happen to me very often, but once in a while I'll run into that issue where the standoff will be inserted at a weird angle, and then that'll screw up your screw and standoff. Okay, there we go. Got all the screws and standoffs inserted into the switch plate here. I'm going to stick the middle layer on now. Alright, here we go. And now I'm going to stick the bottom plate on. And before I do that, I realize this spot is missing a screw and standoff. Try again. Alright, there we go. Put the bottom plate on. Alright, got my screwdriver here. I really like this one screwdriver here. It's made by Wera. This one's for Phillips head, so it says PH1 here. It's got a nice feel to it. For people in the US, I got this one from kctool.com. They sell a set of these micro screwdrivers, and they're very nice. It's got this nice twisty top, so you can kind of screw things in very quickly. Okay, so there we go. Last thing I usually like to do is put on some bumpers at the bottom here. These aren't included with the kit, but I keep a whole stash of these in my office. This will prevent your nice keyboard from scratching up your desk with those screw heads. So here we go. Pretty set in place there. So got our first half done. I'll put that aside and we'll do our second half here. Alright, got our plate. Grab a few switches here. You don't have to put the switches exactly where I'm putting them, but this is just kind of a general idea of what pattern I do on the piece on the switch plate here. And I'll get this on again. Just gotta wait for the iron to warm up. As you know, so this thing goes to sleep if you don't use it for a couple minutes, but when you start moving again, it detects it and it warms up very quickly. So this is pretty nice iron. It only costs like $70 or so, so it's definitely not a bad investment. Alright, once again, checking to make sure that all the switches are straight here. And I'll start inserting the rest of the switches here. Move this solder out of the way. Alright, there we go. Now the other thing you can do is you can just insert one row of switches at a time, solder those, and then insert the next row. That's kind of really preference on how you like to do things. And where is that one last switch? grab an extra switch. Alright, here we go. Okay, and with these two thumb keys here, just make sure they're aligned properly. There can be a slight bit of skew when you're inserting the switches in initially, so just make sure they're straightened out. Otherwise your keycaps might bang into each other in that section. Now, for my solder here, I've got it on this nice reel here, or at least a solder holder here, so it kind of rolls off, helps me roll the solder off very easily. Really handy to have. Now, in most of the builds I usually do, they are using MX switches, but if you notice these other holes on the PCB here, can support Alps, so that would be this hole and this top hole here, or Choc, which would be this hole and this hole here. And if you are using Choc switches, the one thing you'll want to note about that is you can get away with using shorter standoffs. At least if you're not using a middle layer, you can kind of make your build a little bit shorter if you are really interested in making your build shorter if you're using Chocs. I don't know the exact measurement of what standoffs you could use, but if I had to guess, you could probably use 7mm standoffs instead of the 9 and 10mm standoffs we use here for the MX switches. Alright, all done. I'm going to turn this iron off, if I can remember how to turn it off. Yeah, I'll just unplug it. I don't need it anymore. Alright, and same thing as with the other half. We'll get the screws on and standoffs on here first. Alright, just one more. Okay, everything's on there. Now we'll add the middle layer pieces here. Stick on the bottom plate. And then we'll screw the bottom plate on. Okay, last screw here. Alright, there we go. I did forget to check whether all the switches were straight on here before closing it up, but looks like it's all fine. So then the last thing I'll do is put on the rubber bumpers. Alright, there we go. Got ourselves a fully built Iris here. So hopefully you found this build video to be informative. Just let me know if you've got any questions or comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. Talk to you later.